Did you know that your business has a totally different energy than you? And if you're treating your business like it's you or even that it's an extension of you, you're gonna get it wrong. In today's podcast episode, I'm gonna share with you messages from your business trying to explain how it is different than you. Let's get into today's episode. All right. We've all fallen into this trap before, especially those who have personal brands, and we think that we are the business and the business is us, and there's this complete enmeshment, and it just makes it so much harder because think about it, like it is so much harder to sell yourself than to sell something that's outside of you, or you can't possibly be just one thing, right? As a person, we have so many different aspects of our personality and who we are. So even when you're like, how do I name myself, or how do I make the branding of this website or the branding of this work that I'm doing, it's so hard to do when you think that it's you. So today's episode is really your business talking to you and sharing with you how its energy is, even if it's just slightly, but it is different than you are, and trying to show the differences. So what is the business's energy? So everything has energy, including your business. I mean, think about it. You had to start your company, you named your company, and if you're further along with your business, you even made it an LLC or an S corp or incorporated it wherever you are. That's what we do in the US. I'm sure there's other things in other countries, but you gave it a name, and you probably even gave it a birthday. So just right there, it's showing us that you birthed it the same way that you have birthed maybe a child, or your parents birthed you, and you know that you are not your mom, you are not your dad, and that your children, hopefully we've learned this by now, that they are not us. Even though we try to project and put our stuff on our kids, they're slightly different. They may look like us, and they may have very similar personalities to us, personalities that are similar to our partners, right? But they are still separate, and they have their own soul's purpose. So the same thing with our business, which is hard to understand. But when we start to embrace this, we can actually understand the business better. And honestly, I find that when I remember that my business is separate from me, it is so much easier to maneuver and to make the right decisions and to feel into its own intuition, right? Because, you can be the most advanced intuitive, but at the end of the day, reading your own energy is always going to be a little bit harder than reading a stranger's energy or a friend's energy, because it's separate from you. So imagine we're trying to run these businesses that are supposed to support us and be successful and all that, but it's like we constantly have to look within it and within ourselves. It's so easy to make the wrong choices or to mix it up. So I'm really excited to share today's episode. I am particularly excited because your business's energy is kind of sassy. So it's kind of like a bitchy episode a little bit, which I was like, oh, it's fun to take on that voice. I'm like, I don't mind being a little bitchy for this episode, but that's really it's almost like a teenager who's a little upset, or like a kid, like a sassy little girl who's a little upset that you have mistaken or put some of your stuff on her when she's like, I got other things to do, man. I don't have time for you to be putting your stuff on me. So hopefully today's episode will show you a little bit about her plans, where she wants to go, what her personality is like, so that we can start to make that distinction and really start to see it separate from us and make good choices as the leader that we are. All right, let's get into the 7 messages. Message number 1, she was just coming straight out. She's saying, I am sexier than you. I am bolder than you. Stop making me so basic. Stop making me so average. Stop trying to make me like the everyday. She's saying I am much more bolder. I thought this was so funny, and I was expecting something like this to come later in the reading, but not, right away. But the energy of the business is saying listen, I get it. You might be a mom, or you might be casual, or it might even be hard to see yourself as bigger than life. So you keep the business like that. But this business is really more aspirational than anything. And it's giving me a Sasha Fierce vibes, it's giving Sasha Fierce. So I'm sure that whoever Beyonce is at home in her sweatpants, we probably don't want to see that version of her on stage. I mean, of course, if we're super fans, yes. Because you always want to know the behind the scenes or whatever, but what made her was whoever she shows up on stage. And we don't know her, but I'm sure if, or you think Taylor Swift or whatever, like, it's not like they're wearing that makeup every day. They're not wearing those costumes every day. They're not doing those dances every day, right? Like, that is not their everyday. But what they show us is that because they're putting their brand on a stage. So your brand is asking for the same thing. It's like saying, like, don't show up in the jeans or the hoodie or the sweatpants or like whatever, or maybe don't think that the branding is not that important. Like, she's really saying, like, dress it up, give it a costume. And everybody's costume is going to be different, right? Like, somebody's costume might be sleek, another costume might be super colorful. So obviously, like, it's not to look like everybody else, but Lady Gaga's outfits are very different than like a Taylor Swift's costumes, right? Or any movie that you watch, but definitely giving it a bit of a persona and knowing that it is an elevated version, that it is a almost like stage version of you or of what you see. Because I know not everybody has their personal brand, but it has like its own personality. And even if it's not you, your personal brand, it like looks like, it has a look. So even if you want to you want to put like a picture of maybe like how you would imagine your brand dressing, or what, what hair your brand has, or kind of like what bags would she wear, even if it's not a personal brand, that may be helpful. But to see, because she's really trying to show that she has a different look and she's much bolder and sexier, was the vibe that I was getting. This makes me think about my own work, right? Like, I was born Nicole Mercedes Novo. And as I became a writer, and even just in school, when I got into high school is when I really started to take on the name Nikki Novo, because we had to embroider our bags and like our jackets. And most of my friends were already calling me by my nickname. My parents have always called me, my brothers have, but the teachers and stuff, like, were still calling me Nicole. And I remember like making this really big decision to make sure that my bag said Nikki and not Nicole. And that was like the beginning of like me branding Nikki Novo. And then of course, as I became a writer, like even more so, I was like, that's going to be my name. That's like, I'm going to brand as Nikki Novo. So much so that when I first started spelling my name Nikki, when I was younger, I thought that it was Nicki. That's how I would write it. And then one day my mom was like, oh no, like, I never imagined your name being Nicki. I always saw your name, because she always wanted me to be Nikki, but she felt like she should give me a full name just in case. So she didn't name me Nikki. She named me Nicole on purpose and never really like called me that. But she was the one that told me, she's like, oh, no. I always saw it as Nikki to be symmetrical with Novo. So she's like, she gave me like the logo, which is so funny. And as a writer, obviously then I started to write as Nikki Novo. And when I got married, I did take on my husband's name. I added it to my name. And I kind of love having a family name. Like, that is a name I use with the kids' schools. That's like, that's like my business, like my banking name, like all that kind of stuff. And I really love having this like other name that reminds me of like the grounded version of who I am. Because Nikki Novo truly is the brand name. Like, that's not really me. And even like the closest people to me, funny enough, they don't call me Nikki, they call me Nick. All my friends call me Nick, my brothers call me Nick. My dad and my mom will call me my name in Spanish, but for the most part, like, if you're very close to me, you call me that. And then if you call me Nikki Novo, it's probably because you've met me lately or through work. So it gives some separation. And I know that we can't all have that, especially if we have personal brands. But finding that separation and seeing that even if it is your name, it's you, but on stage. So it's okay to give it a persona, because like, I might show up in camera wearing something very sleek, but that doesn't mean that on the weekends I'm not looking like a disaster, right? Like, you'll see me on stories, right, that I'm wearing hiking clothes that does not match. I'm wearing like a Patagonia and a Cotopaxi and different colors, because that's what my day-to-day life looks like. But for the most part, when I'm showing up on camera and everything like that, I'm going to put some effort into it and make sure that I put a little bit of that persona. And I don't even have this 100% by any means. Like, this was helpful for me to hear this message. And I think it just gives us permission, right, to be bolder and have fun with our businesses. which is why we did it in the first place. Like, you kind of get to hide behind this like persona. You get to be like your normal self, but then every once in a while you get to be like this stage self. So really asking you to notice that. I thought it was so funny when she was like, please stop making me basic. Stop trying to make me average. Stop trying to make me basic. Have fun with me. Notice that I'm bold and like respect that I'm bold. Message number 2, she was saying, I am not money driven the way you are. Of course, money is important, but she was saying that I receive money because I am good at what I do and also because I have good word of mouth. So it almost looks like she's saying that she's more concerned with the product being, a high performer and like that product being good, and that to her, like, she's more interested in the craft or like the product and it being great. And that's like whatever it's a service or whether it's, a product, like she feels like that will do the rest, like that will bring in money. So you, of course, like sometimes as like a CEO or like an employee of the business might have to think about money and making sure that like everything is flowing and working. But she is saying that she can't be forced to make things with money in mind, if that makes sense. Like, she sees herself more like an artist. And I'm sure you know this part of you, like you probably channel this part of you sometimes. And she's like, I am more concerned with like it being really good. And I can't like make decisions just because I'm like, oh, this is going to make money or this is going to work. She's like, that's not me. That may be you, and that's okay if you need to think that way every once in a while. But she's like, I'm just not gonna do well when that is projected on me. And it's important to know that that's you and not me. Message number 3, this one's hilarious. She said, I do not need rest. She said, you need rest. And just because you need rest doesn't mean that I need rest. She's saying, I will be totally fine being a 24/7 like company. But of course, that just means that things would have to be systemized and batched. And like the only thing that keeps it not being 24/7, as she's saying, is like a lack of systems, a lack of planning and getting ahead. So for example, maybe there's times like I don't put a podcast episode, like in her mind, she's like, well, maybe because you need rest, or maybe because like, Kat, who works with you and edits the podcast, needs rest, but like I don't. So if you batch or get ahead or you have a better system, then you guys can still rest while the systems are doing their job. Because she's saying like, I am not asking for rest, and that's okay. Like, you are asking for rest, but she's like, I am not. So I thought that was so interesting. She was saying that her system should be working 24/7. Like, that may be your sales, right? Like, is your website working? And is there, maybe even like a customer that can a customer service representative that can answer questions even when you're sleeping? Or is it an AI that does that? Or are there good, for example, like we sell our, all the programs, like a soul reading method. And the idea is that sales page that sells soul reading method does all the work. The idea is that there's, FAQs there, and that if somebody has questions, that hopefully those FAQs answer those questions. There's videos of me talking. There's videos of me showing the behind the scenes of the offer. So hopefully you can find that at my 2 a.m. and still purchase. And that's why she's saying like, yeah, you need to rest. Like, you need to sleep at 2 a.m. But hopefully I can still be selling or still be open at 2 a.m. And that is all about the systems. And that's about knowing that. So sometimes, I actually saw this the other day. I'm in a mastermind, and there's this guy in the mastermind that like when he was talking on the Zoom, I was like, oh, this guy's so interesting, so fascinating. Like, I want to follow his work. So I go to his work, and like on his Instagram, like he put like these like photos of basically saying that they were down for like a period of rest, and that they were like taking a break and blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, like good for them, like that's amazing. Like, my coffee shop, I get mad when they close on Sundays, but I'm like, yes, they have employees. Those employees need to rest. That's a company that cannot be open 24/7 unless there's some sort of like little vending machine that sells the coffee, right? So of course, but when I saw that, I was like, oh, like I mean, I'm all about rest. I take time off, but my hope is that I have like good enough systems to like keep something going, you know? So yeah, I found that so interesting. I'm trying not to judge it. Like, I don't mean to judge it. I just found it interesting. So then when I got this message, I was like, oh, this is funny. So, remembering that we need rest, but that may not always be like the time that the business needs rest. It's different if you're like, we're going to take the whole company on a retreat and we're going to close down for a while, but really being able to see that hopefully, like, of course you need rest and like you need like time where you're not in the business and all that, but is there a way for the business to keep doing what it's doing without you? And that's a sign that you've realized that you are separate from the business. Message number 4, this is kind of sassy. She was saying, I was not created to be liked. She said, I was created to express and to put out a frequency into the world that tunes people. So it's almost like whatever the company is providing has you might call it like an experience, and that experience is a frequency, and that frequency tunes up certain people. Like, people that are attracted to it get almost like an energetic vibrational tune up from being around there. And that is different than being liked. And it seems like sometimes, it's like when the mom wants the daughter to be popular, that causes a riff, and the daughter like starts to get confused and doesn't know who she really is, or, starts to rebel. And sometimes like the business is saying that, like, if we're projecting too much of like, oh, this brand needs to be liked, like needs to be approved of, then the brand is going to start to rebel. Where sometimes for example, like you might have a brand and this brand might really stand for something, right? Maybe it'd be like, I really stand for, like, you can do anything. Like, you can absolutely do anything. And that could be polarizing to somebody who's like, well, listen, I cannot do everything. I know that because I've had major trauma and I have this, and this, and I have limitations. I can't do everything. And that brand will have to be like, that's on you. That's the way you like believe, or that's the way you see things. But I know that you can do everything, right? Which will make that person upset. That's going to trigger that person. But the brand is saying, like, I am not here to be liked by everybody. I'm probably, when I'm strong in who I am, I will of course trigger people and push people away, but that is the point, because I'm for a certain group that needs to be tuned into my vibration. So I think that, like, that doesn't have to be so polarizing like that example I gave you, but it can also be just like, these are our values, like this is what we believe in. Or it could even be like, this is our aesthetic. We'll never do plaid. We only like beige colors. And there might be people that are like, like, I hate that this brand has no colors, that it's just so beigey or whatever. And it's like, cool, like that is not like for you. Like, that vibration doesn't attune. I'm not going to attune you, basically. I'm not the vibration that's going to tune you, if that makes sense. So that, I thought that was important, because we may want to be liked, as humans, of course. And I think that even if we're still working on people pleasing and having a hard time, like, wanting to be liked, I think by knowing that the business is separate, we can make a little bit of space there and be like, okay, like, I'm going to respect that, like, she doesn't really care to be liked. And when there's like some sort of separation, I'm not going to blame myself, because there's something different between me and the business, if that makes sense. So it might be a little bit easier to get past like our own personal people pleasing and, and like letting the business be its own person. Also, it's kind of a reminder, and that's why business can be hard. And that's why business sometimes, to me, is the like biggest spiritual journey we will have. Running your own business like just puts you up against all your shadows. And if you want to be successful, it's like you're just having to look at them like time after time after time. And it's kind of like saying that your issue with like wanting to be liked, right? Like our people pleasing issues is hurting our child. Like, it's hurting our business. We are hurting our business, which is like crazy, because nobody wants to hurt their business. But but we are. So like it might be maybe that is the motivation to heal from that. And how beautiful that our business was the one that motivated us to heal something that's probably been around for so long. Maybe it's been around in for many for many generations within your lineage, right? And that your business is the one that really motivates you to change, the same way that sometimes like we might have a bad habit, but we love our child so much that having the child and seeing the child picking up on our bad habits motivates us to change. Message number 5. She says, I love people. She's like, you may have your days, which is normal, right? Like days that it's harder than others. She's like, but I love people. The more the merrier. She's almost showed that she was like very community oriented, and she like enjoys a party. So she's kind of like, yeah, the more the merrier. And that is something to look at too, that sometimes you're kind of, of course, us being tired or needing a break from people, but it's not really like a business that's not supposed to have people, it's not a business that's like supposed to avoid people. It's just a business that needs good systems and good places for people to flow in and out of, and to really see how those people can be taken care of, even if they're not taken care of by an actual human, but that the business would like to take care of, and the business would like to call people in. She's almost feeling that this feeling of like stranger danger, or of having too many people around me and like being bothered by too much energy is like blocking her from bringing in the amount of people like she's supposed to bring in. So she's saying like, you need to figure that out. And honestly, figuring that out has so much to do with figuring out like how people have access to you, and also figuring out what kind of people I want my brand to actually attract. So she's saying like, what if all these people that you brought into the company were like amazing people that you wanted to hang out with? That would be very different than doing a business that brings in like the worst kind of clients. So like, let's say you're a realtor, and because you want to do high-end realty, you're kind of like, oh, well, I guess I have to deal with like the most asshole people, because rich people are assholes, and people that want these, multi-million-dollar homes are assholes. And it's like, that is so not true, right? There are asshole rich people, and there are super beautiful, kind rich people as well. So we can say, I do high end, I do multi-million-dollar homes, but I work with the kindest, most heart-centered people. Those are the people I work with. And by saying that, all of a sudden, like, you're not trying to protect your energy from these other people, and that way you feel safe calling in a bunch of your people. So there is like a safety in calling in these people. She's like, I love people. Just our situation with not really understanding this is what's causing a block. There's like a real, I almost see us like holding up like with a fence, or like a dam, and not letting in like this pouring in of audience and of customers and clients, because of not being able to figure this out. And in addition to that, it's also about really putting places in the business where people can flow into. It reminds me of like, a preschool, right? Like you go into a preschool room and they have a little area for your shoes, and they have a little area for math, and they, it's all labeled so the kids know where to go and what to do. So if we had a business that we didn't label anything, or we didn't put like, oh, this is a quiet area, this is the talkative area, then of course it's going to be a free-for-all, and then the kids are constantly bothering the teacher. But if the kids learn like, oh, everything is labeled, like everything is organized, just follow the labels, then the teacher is chilling. She can do what she came for, which was to teach. So that is holding up currently this like flow of people, and we want people because we want customers. And she's like, I'm good. Like, I like people. It's kind of like a teacher saying, I like 3-year-olds. Like, you might not like 3-year-olds, but I do. I really enjoy 3 and 4-year-olds. Like, I love this. But the disorganization is, making everybody crazy. Message number 6. She's saying, I like siblings. Like, she was talking almost about, I don't know why she called it siblings, but it was like the people that work within the company. But one thing that might be a little off is that there's this idea that these people work for us, like that we're thinking that when we bring in a contractor or when we bring on an employee, that we're thinking that the people work for me, right? Like I hire Kat, I hire Sophie, and Sophie works for me or Kat works for me. And she's saying like they do not work for you, they work for the business. They work for the mission. And that is a little tricky because it seems like when you start to see that the people you bring on, contractors, all that kind of stuff, that they should be all guided by a joint mission rather than you, let's say. You may hold the vision, of course, and you're leading, but to remember that they like work for the company and they work for the vision. So that, which is a little different than working for you. Of course, if you have like a personal assistant and stuff like that, that's like somebody who's helping you make space in your life so that you can do what's needed for the company. But she's kind of funny. She was like, you all work for me, which I feel that way sometimes, right? It's like I'm here for the mission, I'm like the mission keeps calling me, and I keep like almost like I'm like a servant to it in many ways. So she was saying that, like, I feel like I don't have it super clear, but almost like being a servant to the vision and the mission of the company. And that if the employees are a little off, or like you're having a hard time with like the people that work with you, or even having a hard time like bringing people in, she's saying it's because you haven't explained the vision and the mission enough. So that might mean that like we might need to take a little bit of time and write out the vision, and when you bring people on, explaining like where the company really wants to go, like where the brand wants to go, what it's inspired by, the kind of culture it has. Like you can be like, listen, like I wish this brand was slower, but it's not. It's a really fast-paced brand. It works like this, like almost like kind of like hiring a nanny for your kid, just being like, listen, I wish my kid slept more, but he doesn't. Unfortunately, he only takes a 45-minute nap, and I totally understand if like you want to be with a kid that takes a 3-hour nap, that's just not here. So really being okay with sometimes like the company moves in the way that it does, and that's not always on you, right? Like that's the spirit of the company. And explaining that to people, and people that are in alignment with that, they're going to be like, cool, So, and people that are not, that they want the 3-hour sleeping kid, like that's okay too. But to explain that vision, and that's where you really get people that are working with you that are in alignment. And message number 7, I love that she ended on a happy note. She's saying, I am destined to perform. Like she's like, I was born to perform. I was born to do well. I was born to succeed. I was born to be successful. There was no other, I was born to thrive, right? Like she's really like, that's what I'm here for. But it seems that we, as the birther of this, have moments or more than moments, we tend to doubt our own leadership. And the doubting of the leadership is what's causing the business to look like it might not thrive, or maybe it might not even survive. So she was saying, like, before you question whether the business is going to work or not, what you're really questioning is, am I a strong enough leader? And nobody is truly, truly born a leader. I mean, some of us might be more, have like the energy to be leaders more than others, but leadership is something that can be learned. I mean, there's endless books about it. There's people that coach, there's classes, there's courses, there's all sorts of things. So instead of like blaming the dud of the business, and it's not to blame ourselves, but it's to be like, I am not 100% confident in my own leadership skills, and I need to learn and figure out if I can become a better leader. So that leadership skill is really like, she's saying that sometimes our doubt is projected onto her when really the doubt is about us, the leader itself. And sometimes it's like, yeah, I need to become a better leader. And then sometimes it's like, I got to trust that I'm a great leader. I have to trust that like I'm doing great work. And it's kind of like trusting that like, I'm a good parent. Like I care. I bring them to the doctor. I do my best. I read this book. I talked to the teacher. I'm looking for the best school. Like I might not be perfect and I might not have all the answers, but I am doing my best, and I am doing my best to like dot, I's and cross T's. And if there is something more that I need to know, well, then maybe I need to buy a book. Maybe I need to sign up for a class. Maybe I need to, find a mentor, but really investing in our own leadership, because she's going to be performing, but she's also at the end of the day at our mercy. She's like a child to us. We're the ones that are going to have to take her to after school activities or take her to school and make it be consistent. We have to feed her. We need to buy the right food. I could have her and feed her a bunch of donuts versus maybe giving her a salad, right? So she's still at the mercy of our own leadership. But when we find some doubt, to really see like, how can I increase my leadership skills and how can I invest in my leadership skills? Because I know that this business is destined to thrive. All right, friends, that's what we have for today. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about that and what stood out to you. Of course, remember, your heart always knows the way. So I'm really wondering how your heart felt during this time. I know she was a little tough on us, a little sassy, but at the end of the day, hopefully it created a bit of separation so that we can see it with fresh eyes and really be the best leader that we can be for these businesses that really want to thrive and were born to thrive. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next episode.